So a common mistake that people make in Excel is to hard code parts of a formula, and hard coding part of a formula means that rather relying on cell references or calculations, you're putting specific values, you're typing them directly into the formula. So we've got an example here. In the example one, we've got a hard coded part of the formula. So we've got a list of products, their price, and then the discounted price. Now the discount of 7.5% is manually typed into each of these formulas. So we can see in each of them we get the 0.075. On the other hand, in example 2, we've got the discount written out down here, and each of these formulas is referencing this cell. Now the advantage of this is that if we wanted to change the discount on these, we just have to edit one cell. We don't have to change the cell in the actual formula itself and then drag it down or manually edit each of them. We just do one change like this. So if I wanted to change it to 10%, for example, do 10%, hit enter, and they all update. That's one advantage. And basically, the less manual work you can do in Excel, the less likely you are to make mistakes. The other advantage of this kind of thing, of having it kind of clearly laid out, is that if someone was to look at this spreadsheet, or if you were to come back to this spreadsheet in a few months' time, it instantly makes it a lot clearer to see what's going on. We can clearly see that we've got the discounted price and we've got the discount written there. We click in one of these cells, we can see that our discount is being referenced, and we've also got the cell locked there with the dollar signs. And it's just a much better way to write your formulas in Excel. So another common mistake that people make in Excel is having poorly formatted data and spreadsheets that look really messy, especially when the way in which you can fix them is actually really quite straightforward and quick. And the reason you don't want poorly formatted spreadsheets is because it can look unprofessional, and if you've put a lot of work into a spreadsheet, you don't want it to kind of come across as looking rushed or messy to a boss or a client or whoever you're sending it to. So here's a quick example. So we've got a list of employees in this column here, column A, and you can see that the column width is far too wide for this data. So we've got all this unnecessary blank space. The office column, column B, on the other hand, is too narrow. So some of the office names are being cut off and it just looks a bit cramped. The join date column is fine, but there's a few other problems with this data. So the row heights are quite inconsistent. So if we look at this one here, there's all this white space, and you can see how that's common for a lot of them. And then also another quick thing is that the column headings, name, office, and join date, they're not formatted differently to the rest of the data, so they're a bit hard to see, and it would be better to put them in bold, for example. So there's a couple of things we can do to really quickly fix the formatting here. If we just click in the top left corner here, this will select all the cells, and then if we double click on one of the columns, this will auto size all of these column widths so they fit the data perfectly. Now we can then double click on one of the row heights, just like that, and we get all of the rows now fitting as well. A quick way to make a table of data, like a list of information like this, look better is to actually format it as a table. And to do that, we can use the keyboard shortcut of Control-T. And then we can select OK, and you'll see we have the option to leave that ticked. My table has headers, which it does. Select OK, and then now we have our data formatted in a table, and it just altogether looks a lot smarter than it did before. A really common mistake that people make in Excel is to not bother learning keyboard shortcuts and to rely too much on doing things manually with the mouse. So we've got some sales data here. It's sales data Q1 2021 through to Q4, broken out by office A, B, C, and D. And let's say we want to add up some totals in these cells at the bottom and at the end for the individual quarters and the individual offices. Now, a slow way to do this would be to click into the cell, do equals sum, and then highlight the cells that we want added, hit enter, drag it along, and then sort of do the same along here like this, hit enter, and then drag these down, this type of approach, which a lot of people would take. But a quicker way to do something like this, once you know keyboard shortcuts, you can just do Control-A to select everything and then press Alt equals. And Excel instantly detects where we want our sum calculations to go. And we can see that we've got all of our quarters and offices added up, as well as the total figure for everything there as well. So keyboard shortcuts, it may seem like they're not always worth learning, but if you're using Excel frequently, you can end up saving a huge amount of time by learning keyboard shortcuts. A common mistake that people make in Excel is to enter dates, but not have them formatted correctly as date values. So we've got two columns of dates here, and they look the same at face value. So November the 1st, 2021, and we've got the same one there, November the 2nd, November the 2nd. All of these look the same. The problem is that these cells here in column B aren't actually formatted as dates in Excel. So to Excel, this is simply just text, and what that means is it's been written in, but it hasn't been formatted as a date. So if we were to say try and drag these down, if we wanted November the 8th, November the 9th, etc., it wouldn't work because Excel is not seeing that pattern of the date series. These dates, on the other hand, they're written out the same way as these, but they are underlying the way they look. They are actually date values, and the formatting has been applied to look like this. But if you notice in the formula bar, we actually get the date value. So if we click here, we get the 2nd November written out as a date, 3rd November written out as a date, and it's just the formatting that looks like this. These ones, on the other hand, their formatting and the way they actually are in Excel's eyes is simply just text. So if you are ever entering dates, do make sure that they are actually date values in Excel. And when they're date values, we can do things like this and drag it down, and Excel will continue the pattern as it recognizes we're working with dates. You can change the formatting of dates by pressing Control 1, and I've got custom here. So we have the date written out as month, D, comma, year, and Excel interprets that to basically format the date in this way. But if we do Control 1 here to bring up the formatting menu, it's just formatted generally, so it doesn't recognize that it's a date. So making sure your date values are actually recognized as date values by Excel is something that's also really important, otherwise you could run into problems. A mistake that you don't want to make in Microsoft Excel is to not clearly label your data. So we've got an example spreadsheet here. We've got 3 sheets, sheet 1, sheet 2, and sheet 3. And within each sheet we have invoices, the invoice number, and the value of those invoices. But that is the only information we have about this workbook. So there's a couple of things we could do to make this clearer. We could add descriptions within each sheet, or we could also rename our sheets. So let's say this is 3 sheets of information that are all invoices for Q1, and we've got sheet 1, which is for January 21, sheet 2, which is for Feb 21, and sheet 3, which is for March 21. So instantly, just with that quick change, we instantly kind of know what each of these sheets of invoices relates to. And basically a good principle is, if you are someone who had never worked with or looked at the spreadsheet before, would you be able to understand what it is and what it's trying to communicate? And if you have that principle in mind, you're less likely to do things like this, where you have sheets that are completely unnamed, or data that isn't labeled up with additional information in additional columns, for example. Because when you come back to a spreadsheet, maybe it's several months after you worked on it, you may not remember exactly what was in it. And also, if you're sending that spreadsheet to other co-workers or to other clients, they're not going to have the context that you do. So always label things clearly and make them as easy as possible to understand. Thanks for watching this video. If you found it useful, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.